where Shimon was miyabem Rachel Eshes Ruvain before Levi was born. So when Levi comes into the world, he's presented with the reality of Shimon being married to Rachel. Forget about Ruvain. Rachel is no longer being projected by Ruvain because Shimon already was miyabem Rachel. So with Shimon's death, it's Shimon who is projecting Rachel for Yibum to Levi, and Reuven, and both Levi and Shimon were Ba'olam B'Adamachas. So therefore, there is no problem to block Yibum or Chalitza, and in this case, Levi will have a choice. He can either be Yabim Rachel or Rivka, or the other way around. He could, or he wants to give Chalitza. He can choose which one. And now we see the Gemara. Amar Rav Oshia, Cholakay Reb Shimon Af Barishona. Rabbi Shimon disagrees with the Tanakama, even in the case where Levi was born after Reuven's death, before the Yibum of Shimon. And still, Rabbi Shimon is of the opinion that Levi could be Biabim, Sarah, or Rivka, because the very moment that Shimon is Miyabim, Rachel, Eshes, Ruvain, or he has Sarah over here, it doesn't matter the names, then at that moment, there's a brand new Zika, a marriage relationship between Eshes, Ruvain, and now she's Eshes, Shimon. So when Shimon dies, Levi could be Miyabim, Eshes, Shimon, because there it was Ba'olama, they were Ba'olamach. It means that according to Rav Oshia, the machlokas between Rabbi Shimon and the Chacham is a very extreme machlokas. Not only in a case where Levi was born after Shimon was Miyabim Eshes Ruvain, but even if Levi was born before Shimon was Miyabim Eshes Ruvain, when the Zika to Ruvain was still alive and active, even so, with the subsequent marriage, the Yibum of Shimon to Eshes Ruvain, the Zika of Ruvain is gone, and there's only one Zika left, the Zika from Shimon, and there's no Erev and no problem. Mimai. What led Rav Oshia to that conclusion? After all, we only see Rav Shimon in our Mishnah. We didn't see that Rav Shimon argued against the Tanakama. It's not quoted or recorded in the previous Mishnah, namely in the Mishnah in which Levi was born before Shimon was Miyabim. The Gemara answers, Midik Tani Mishnah Yisera Bibava Deresha Leman Katani Lo. Why was the Mishnah HaKodemes, the earlier Mishnah, why was it included and canonized in the Mishnayos? What's it coming to teach me? If it's coming to teach me the Shita of the Chachamim, that doesn't make sense, because the more radical Chiddush of the Chachamim is right here in our Mishnah, and that's the Kal V'chomer. Hashta Yibem Lulav Basof Nolat. In the case in our Mishnah, the second Mishnah, where Shimon was Miyabim before the birth of Levi, Dechi Ashkecha Bet Teira Ashkecha, when Levi was born into this world, he found a Yevamot coming from Shimon, that's Hetera, and nevertheless, Asrei Rabbanan, the Rabbanan exclude Yibum, is Nolad for Achar Kach Yibem Bipoy. Do you have to go back in the previous Mishnah and tell me about the case where Levi was born before the Yibum of Shimon? If he was born before the Yibum of Shimon, then the Zika to Reuven is alive and well. And that's an Erev of Eshes often Lomo. Elalah, by process of elimination. The reason why we need the previous Mishnah is Rabbi Shimon. It's The Tani Rachel Odia Kochakon, the Rabbi Shimon, the Tani Seifel Odicha Kochon, the Rabbanon. So the previous Mishnah is telling me how far Rabbi Shimon went with his svara, says Rav Oshia. He went as far as to say that even if he was born, Levi was born before Shimon consummated the Yibum, nevertheless, when Shimon dies, Levi could be Miyabim his wife. And the Seifa is Lodicha Kocha D'Rabbanan, that even in a case where Shimon, the second brother, was Miyabim Eishes Reuven before Levi was born, and you would say that Levi came on the scene, it was purely a Torah, nevertheless there's no Yibum. Ubedinu de Niflig Rabbi Shimon Bereisha. So why did Rabbi Shimon's name appear in the Reisha? I mean, that would be a more chiddush, a greater chiddush of Kocho de Rabbi Shimon. We have a call it an ethical principle. Let a person finish and then disagree with them. So you don't want to stop and interrupt the Rabbanan in the middle of their presentation, and we wait until the end. So the Gemara asks, does Rabbi Shimon deny the whole entity of Eishes Achiv Shalohayu B'Olamo? Our answer is no. Two answers the Gemara is going to give. First answer is Bechad Acha Umis V'Noled Loach. There's only one brother alive now. We'll call him Reuven. He gets married and he dies. After he dies, the father now fathers another son. We'll call him Shimon. And that's going to be a case of Eishes Achiv Shalohayu B'Olamo, even according to Rabbi Shimon, because there's no one available to get rid of the Zika from Reuven. It's only Reuven, and now the newly born baby will call him Shimon. Inami, now the Gemara gives another answer. Trey, there are two brothers. Lo yibem v'lo mis. I'll just read the commentary just to remind myself of Pshat. Matzina sheteyaser Sora Eishes Reuven leLevik shenolad liachar mos Reuven ukigon sheshimon tohei b'Olamo lo yibem v'lo mis. So Reuven dies. He leaves his wife Sarah for Yibum to Shimon, but Shimon is frozen for whatever reason. He's not doing what he has to do. So neither did he give Yibum or Chalitza. And then Levi was born. Once again, in such a case, the Zika of Reuven is the only act in town. And at that point, Levi becomes Eishes Achiv Shalohayu B'Olamo. And even if Shimon subsequently is Miyabim, it's too late, because there's already an Isur of Eishes Achiv Shalohayu B'Olamo. Now the Gemara analyzes Rabbi Shimon according to the interpretation of Rabbi Ochi. I can understand Rabbi Shimon's point of view in a case where the second brother, we'll call him Shimon, was Miyabim Eishes Reuven before Levi was born. When Levi is born, the Zika is from Shimon. And that Zika completely replaces the Zika to Reuven. My timer. But if Levi was born before Shimon implemented Yibum, at that point the active Zika was the Zika of Reuven. So the Gemara answers, Kasavar, Rabbi Shimon holds Yesh Zika, the Zika Kiknusa Dami. It means that there's a Zika to Shimon immediately with the death of Ruvain. Is a Zika between Ashes, Ruvain, and Shimon. And that Zika is considered Kiknusa Dami, as if he had already married her. And that means that even if Levi was born before Shimon was Miyabim, it's as if Shimon was Miyabim already based on the Zika. And therefore, from the moment that Levi is born, according to Reb Shimon, he finds her behetera, because it's almost as if she is married already, as if the Yevamot of Shimon had already been implemented. Askif lo Rav Yosef, Hashta Zika umaymar Mesafka leil Reb Shimon I kiknusa damya I lav kiknusa damya is Zika lechuda mi boy. I'm going to prove to you, says Rabbi Yosef, that Rabbi Shimon vacillated about the status of Zika, whether she is kiknusa or she's not kiknusa. And that's in the case of Maima, which intensifies the Zika. It raises it by a couple of decibels. Is Zika lechudami boy? Are you going to tell me that she's already considered a knusa without Maimar, just simply with Nefil Yibum, with Zika, pure, naked Zika, without any Maimar? And now Rav Yosef explains. Mahi. Where do we find that Rav Shimon had such a suffix about the status of Zika? And this is a Mishnah later on in Daf Lamed Aleph Amid Beis. So we have Ruvain, Shimon, and Levi, Shlosha Achim, Nisui l'sholosh nashim nakrios, to three different women that aren't related to each other. Ruvain marries Sarah, Shimon marries Rivka, Levi marries Rachel. Umeis echad mihem below Banin. Let's say, for example, Ruvain dies. He was married to Sarah. The Asaba Hasheni is Shimon, according to our names, Maimar. So now Shimon does Maimar with Ashes, Ruvain, Sarah, the Almana of Ruvain. Now, Umeis, Shimon dies. Hare Elu, we're talking about Sarah, right, who received a mimer from Shimon. And let's say Shimon had his own wife, Rivka. Choltos velo misyavos. They only have chalitza, but no yivu. Again, had Shimon been miyavim Sarah Ashes Ruvain before he died, then the Zika to Ruvain would have been completely undermined and negated and replaced by the Zika to Shimon. She is now Ashes Shimon l'chol dom. And therefore, with Shimon's death, Ashes Ruvain would fall to Yimun to Levi, according to Rabbi Shimon. Had Shimon not done any mimer at all to Ashes Ruvain, then there would be Zikas Ruvain, and she would fall to Levi. But once Shimon does a mimer, which is a kinyan d'Rabbanan, she's knuya lo b'miktsas. But nevertheless, there's still a Zika to Ruvain. So she's like Ashes Shnei Mason. She nofeles liyibim lifnei Levi machma shneya. She falls to Levi because of the Zika to Ruvain and because of the Zika d'Rabbanan to Shimon as a result of mine. The im nafla liyibum yachanim Rivka tzarasa Ashes Shimon min Torah yesh lo liyavim eshtein. If not for the fact that the Rabbanon recognize the Maimar, then there would be no problem of Yibum, because each one of these two women, these two ladies, are falling from Yibum from a different brother. So that's not Eishes Shnei Mason. What makes it Eishes Shnei Mason is the fact that there was Maimar. And he writes here, Osru Chachamim liyavim eshtehen mishum gzera shemiyomru sha'af shtei Yevamos hanoflos mi'ach echad shtei misyavos. Right? It looks like both of them are falling from one Zika. Right, because Shimon only did a Maimar, so it's not a real replacement of the Zika. Shenemar, and we base ourselves on the parsha of Yibum. It says Umeis Echad Mihem, etc. Yevama Yavo Aleha. So from the fact that it says Umeis Echad Mihem, we derive Mishi Yesh Aleha Zikas Yavam Echad V'lo, and not a woman she Yesh Aleha Zikas Shnei Yavam. However, again, chalitza is a necessary requirement because Minatorah Maimar is not coded at all, and Sarah is only Eishes Ruvain. So it's not Eishes Shnei Mason, it's only Eishes Shnei Mason because of the Maimar that was done to Ruvain's wife by Shimon. Rav Shimon disagrees. Omer miyavim li'ezom en sheyirtze v'choletz l'shniya. We cannot prohibit both of them based on this miut of zikas ibumecha v'lo zikas shnei yevamim. We can only exclude and disqualify one of them, and the other one is muteres b'yibum. Why? Because we have a suffix. Is Sarah considered the Bailas HaMaimar le'eches Shimon ayidei Maimar v'zika sheyesh lo ba? We're not sure of the status of Rivka, the second wife of Shimon. Does the Maimar to Sarah make Rivka into a tsaras Sarah? I'm sorry, tsaras Rivka, I meant to say. Is Sarah a tsara to Rivka? Because what would make Sarah a tsara to Rivka? The Maimar. Because now they're both married to the same man, namely Shimon. But the Torah doesn't recognize the Maimar. Yibume chavayu lo. We cannot allow a yibum for both of these. Why did Dilma yesh zika? If we hold that there's a zika, which would mean now that both of them are married to Shimon, Avishtei Yevamos, Habos. I'm just going to guess what's going to come on the next page before I turn the page. Let's see if I'm right. Yeah, I got it right. Bingo. And the Torah says, Beis Achiv, Baisecheru Bonavenu Bonus Shnei Bat. Liyibume Chada, the Iftur Idach. Let's allow Levi, to be miyabim one of them, and the other one goes free without anything. Lo, that's not a possibility. Why? The Dilma Ein Zika Kiknutza. That Zika doesn't make a Kiknutza. And even though there was a Maimar, Sarah is not considered the wife of Shimon. Now, if Sarah is not considered the wife of Shimon, then there is a possibility of Yibum because because Rivka was projected by the Zika of Shimon, Sarah was projected by the Zika of Reuven, and each one is Zkuka Li Levi. Each one has a separate Zika to Levi. So therefore, we cannot say that then if Taros be Yibum v'chalitza. One of them for sure is Mutter be Yibum. But we have now a suffix. Are they both coming from Bayis Echad, or they're coming from two different Batim? So therefore, Ashliach Choletzes v'Edim Misyabemis. Says Rav Yosef, Alma Misafka Leila Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon vacillates on the question of whether Sarah is considered Kiknusa l'Shimon, meaning whether Yesh Zika. And certainly in a Zika alone, she would not be considered as a Vadai Knusa. Shim Loke Lama Hitzriches Hashniya Chalitza. If she was a Vadai Knusa, then it would be Velo Shnei Batin. And there would be no need for Chalitza. So if Rabbi Shimon had a suffix about the status of Zika, how could he be matir the case where Levi was born before the Yibum of Shimon? There's a side to say that Eino Kiknusa, that Zika is not Kiknusa. And when Levi was born before the Yibum of Shimon, the Zika to Shimon is not enough to create a din of Knusa. And therefore, the Zika that projects Rachel, Ashes Ruvain to Levi, is the Zika from Ruvain. And that makes it into an Isser of Ashes Achshalohai Bolomo. And then we're going to say, Kevan Shenesol of Sha'achas, Harei Asura Olav Olamis, even when Shimon subsequently is Miyabim, Sarah Ashes Rachel. We'll just learn a few more lines. The Chi Tema Midoraisa Hachinami Demiyab Machad Umifter Chada. All right, this is getting a little bit too complicated. So I think we'll stop here.
Yeah, you're still recording, Rav.
So let me wish you a wonderful Shabbos.
All right, good Shabbos, Rav. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. All too.
Thank you. All the best.